Now, you are looking, if you are watching on Comcast Sportsnet or watching our stream on Trailblazers.com, the TV guide from 1977, making mention that if there is a sixth game that's necessary between the Blazers and Sixers, that it's going to be played at 12 noon, and coverage of the Kemper Open, a golf tournament, a mid-year golf tournament, would follow immediately. And when they said immediately, they meant immediately. And it became a sort of controversy because the Trailblazers and Sixers, there was an attempt to play this game even earlier Pacific time. And Harry Glickman stood his ground and said, no, I'm not going to ask ticket buyers to change the time that we have promised. The game will be played at noon. They wanted to play at CBS at 10:30 in the morning. And the Blazers stood their ground, said, no, we're playing it at noon. And the only unfortunate thing is that meant that as soon as the game was over, then the telecast was pretty much over. So Brent Musburger, who was the lead voice on CBS, is going to be on a special edition of Talkin' Ball, which will be after the replay of the 77 championship game on Comcast Sportsnet, 9:30 tonight on Comcast. Dan Sheldon talks to Brent Musburger, and you can tell even to this day he regrets the fact that they were not able to bring the championship celebration. To see guys like Bob Gross in the locker room, and do you remember what you were doing on that day, celebrating the championship as you got to the locker room?
Champagne going around.
I bet.
Quite a few people in the locker room I didn't know.
But they knew you.
Crowded, yeah.
They knew you. Does it feel like it was 40 years ago?
Some senses, yeah. My body tells me it was 40 years ago.
What's your first memory that comes to mind when you think of 40 years ago today?
I'm pretty consistent. It was the parade the next day.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
Even more so than the game. You think about the parade?
Well, you know, I played a lot of games. There was only one parade, and it was quite memorable.
So,
and go ahead, Michael.
I want to never interrupt you, but when you said parade, take us through what that felt like. Were there just people everywhere? I mean, and how long was the parade?
Oh, it took a lot longer than they anticipated because it wasn't moving very fast. There were people on the streets. You couldn't move. The cars weren't moving sometimes because there was people in the way. It looked a lot like those ticker tape parades that they had for the end of World War II down in New York. There was people everywhere on top of buildings and hanging out windows on lamp posts. I don't think anybody expected that, but most of the town was there.
Now, who were you with? And were you were they divide the players up into specific cars and so on?
We each had a car. I think the Rose Festival parade was going to be that next Saturday, so they used the same cars that they used for that, and they put each player in their own car.
And I would imagine, as you say, well-wishers left and right and all over. And
you know, had more than one can of beer or whatever handed to me.
Did it move as slow? Was it as tricky to get past that parade route as it was to get off the court after winning Game 6 when the fans streamed the court and joined in the celebration right away?
Yeah, but I was on my feet then, and I got out pretty quick myself. I've seen all the video afterwards of the guys that were stuck on the floor for a little while. I made it in. I was maybe the second guy in the locker room. So, and the parade was quite memorable with all the people.
Bobby, I want to ask you to try to put winning a championship in perspective. I mean, you grew up playing basketball and wanting to get a college scholarship, going to Long Beach State where I watched you with the Pondexter brothers, at Leonard Gray, Rick Alberic. But then you became a pro. And so that's kind of everybody's goal and dream when you play is, wow, can I make it to pros? And then you won a championship. Put the championship in perspective in terms of that sequence.
Well, I can kind of put it in perspective because of the year before that, my rookie season. And coming into training camp and seeing all that talent that was on the floor, and then asking a few guys, well, what do you think we could do this year? And he said, well, we might win 40 games. And I'd come from a high school program that we've lost very few games, college lost very few games, and then you come to the pros and you have all this talent there, and the guys are thinking they can win maybe half the games. And then to actually have a healthy Bill Walton the next year, and the additional pieces that came into town and everything, and including Jack, probably the most important part that joined the team. It didn't take long for us to know that we had a good team. It was just a matter of if we thought we could win the whole thing.
Does reflecting on the championship or reliving it or celebrating it ever get old?
It doesn't, because it doesn't happen that often anymore. If it were every day, I'd get tired of it. That's a long time ago. But every 10 years, it's, I don't mind doing it at all. Going down the lane and remembering what happened back in those days and seeing the guys and looking at the short shorts.
And your mustache. Your mustache was very stylish for the time too.
I had to do something for the hair.
Now you said that you guys knew you would be good. Big step, maybe though, to say you would be championship caliber. When did you feel that maybe you were that good?
Well, when we struggled at the beginning of the year, I've always said this: winning games on the road. And once we started winning games on the road against good teams, we knew we were a good team and could compete with anybody. And at that point, it was just a matter of Bill staying healthy and the team continuing to get better, which we did. We peaked at the right time at the end of the season and had a really tough series with Chicago, 3-game series against Chicago, and got out of that and played Denver pretty tight and got a little rest after the LA game. Probably too much. LA games where we won 4 in a row, but I enjoy looking back every 10 years. Maybe more.
We had Larry on earlier, and he talked about the offense, under Jack Ramsey in terms of motion and movement and wings running and crossing underneath. Defensively, what was the team's focus or the 2 or 3 things that you guys tried to accomplish every night?
Well, I know what my thing was is that Bill and I, we played together very well, and we kind of were on the same wavelength. I was able to cheat a little bit on my man, quite a bit, because onto somebody else, because I knew that I had him behind me, and I don't know how many steals I got from my guy trying to pass it to their center. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Dropping back off on their guy. In terms of offense, though, I always says all we had were role players on that team. Some guys had bigger roles. We ran an offense that didn't change no matter who was in the game. We ran the same plays. Everything was the same. It was unique in that way. I don't think there's many teams that would do that today, run the same plays for other players.
And then you drew tough defensive assignments often during the course of the year. And in the finals, you had to guard one Dr. J. Talk a little bit about that strategy, that game plan, and what you tried to take away from the doctor.
The strategy from the very beginning was not to let him dunk the ball, especially at home, get his crowd excited. The Philadelphia crowd, and then also to make him work as hard as he can to maybe wear him out a little bit. He if he didn't have to guard me, if he just kind of looked at me and just stood there like he liked to do, he didn't actually try to play you too hard on defense. He'd follow you around a little bit, but that's why I was able to score. He didn't play me very tough.
Now going back to game 2, Larry downplayed a little bit the impact of the fight and Mo stepping in. Now, you maybe frustrated Dr. J a little bit. What did you do to get Daryl Dawkins so mad that he wanted to sucker punch you?
That's not the right question. What did he do to get me as mad as I got?
Oh, okay. All right, let's turn it around. What was the story there?
Well, he kind of shoved me under the basket, and the time before down the floor, he shoved me under the basket, and I didn't get the rebound. I should have got the rebound, but he pushed me under the basket. And
yeah,
the
there
next
it is
time
right
down,
there. Yeah.
he did the same thing. You didn't see that, but he pushed me under the basket a little bit. I was able to get my hand on the ball that time, and he grabbed it and flipped me over his back, and I probably said something that I shouldn't have said to him. Got him really upset, and that's all that happened afterwards.
That's got to be the most classic basketball square-off fight, or one of anyway.
It's great. And what people don't know, I'm sure, happened once we got into the locker room. Did you tell Mo, thanks for coming over, but I had it. I mean, you didn't have to come over. I had it.
We had that discussion. You notice there's no security on that floor.
Right. There's fans going out there.
That happening today.
We want to talk about when we come back. We'll talk about parades, and your parade days are not over because we have a very important one coming up that you're going to be part of. So we're going to talk about that as we continue winding down this celebration of the Trailblazers 1977 World Championship. Bobby Gross is with us as we wind down our visit to look back at the 40th anniversary of the Trailblazers World Championship. We asked Larry Steele this question: your best Bill Walton story.
I can't say it.
Everybody does that. Why does everybody do that?
I can't say it. You mean
We need
basketball story?
whatever comes to
I
mind.
remember him sitting in the locker room reading a newspaper on the floor, and this is after he was hurt, I think, at the time, and he was in there having his legs iced after going in a hot tub. And we came in after practice, and he was giving Barry Clemens, this is my rookie season, giving Barry Clemens a rough time about how they cheat. The second team always cheats, and so Barry went up to him, grabbed that newspaper, wadded it up, and started hitting him with it. And Bill took it, of course.
We mentioned parades, and you talked about the great parade the day after winning the championship, and we're going to do some more great, a great job, hopefully, of remembering the World Championship, because the Grand Floral Parade, which you mentioned was soon after the championship parade back in '77, the Grand Floral Parade this time around on June 10th, coming up very soon. It's going to be you and Larry as the Grand Marshals, the Trailblazers '77 championship team, the Grand Marshals of the Spirit Mountain Grand Floral Parade
They're
this time
honoring
around.
the team and the guys that are in town. Lloyd is part of that also.
That's right.
We're in town, so they're going to have us as the marshals, which we're glad to do.
You were working on your parade wave and everything?
Got it.
Got it down?
Yeah, left or right.
Probably a little more orderly maybe than the championship parade the day after the title game would be.
Yeah.
Well, take us back to what the Blazer Mania time. We talked about that with Larry as well. What do you remember most about just the rising of support and how the entire region just embraced this basketball team, and it was the one thing that just seemed to bring everybody together, not just at the championship parade, but all the build-up to winning the title?
It happened very quickly, but looking back on it, I knew that we weren't drawing real well at the beginning of the season, unless it was a team that the fans wanted to watch. But towards the end of the season, we started selling out, and I knew that the fans were getting excited. At that point, we knew we were pretty much in the playoffs if we just continued playing well. We didn't. I think we were 49 and whatever. But the Blazer Mania stuff really started in the playoffs when we came back from first playoff series in Chicago. There were people at the airport. Back in those days, they could walk all the way right to the gate. The people did, and there were during the Philadelphia series where we had thousands of people in the airport at 2:00 in the morning or whatever it was when we got delayed or we couldn't fly all the way back from Philadelphia without stopping in Fargo or wherever it was. That was pretty amazing, and I don't know, they don't do that today because they can't get back there, obviously, but it was, we were told flying in that there was a large crowd out there, but we had no idea what they meant by a large crowd. Shook more hands and hugged more babies walking out of that game, from Game 5, after Game 5, than I ever have. There was thousands and thousands of people in the airport.
Well, Bob, it's a special time, a special day, and thank you so much for coming on board and helping us be able to pick your brain and relive what was a special time for Trailblazer fans. And the fact we can still talk about it 40 years later means that it was obviously something very, very meaningful to a whole lot of people. And thanks for helping us be part of that celebration tonight.
Well, thank you. It is special.